and other places of the country uh, in July and August that drove out the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who is now sheltered in India. And if news reports are to be believed, she is she has found she's camped in Delhi. We do not know for how long the Dhaka government of Muhammad Yunus has sent a note verbal to the government of India, to the Ministry of External Affairs. A note verbal is a formal diplomatic request uh, in which they have asked the Indian government to send Sheikh Hasina back. We do not know the response of the Indian government so far, but both the Bangladesh Foreign Ministry and the Indian Foreign Ministry have confirmed that the note verbal has been sent and it has been received. In the meanwhile, since that announcement was made last week, we have had a spate of arrests of Bangladeshis in Bengal. By some accounts, the police and investigative agencies of the Indian authorities have said that at least one of them has had links with a terrorist outfit that was formerly thought to be based in Pakistan. There have also been certain other frictions, but let's come to that a little later.
So, can you please tell us, Sujan, about the history of skirmishes between the Indian border forces and the Bangladeshi border forces? I believe that they have had previous history of such. I don't know whether I should call it skirmishes or full blown sort of conflict. So, can you explain a bit about that?
Uh, Before coming to that, there is something that a lot of people do not know and just assume is that we have very long borders with China, with Pakistan, with Myanmar, Burma. But India's longest land border and riverine border is and maritime border is with Bangladesh. The land border with Bangladesh is 4,096 kilometers long, and from West Bengal, if we were to map the land border from east to north to west, the land border traverses the states of West Bengal, Assam, Meghalaya, uh, Tripura, and Mizoram. So we have this huge expanse of uh, land and riverine, or water bodies that define this. That are the characteristics of the India-Bangladesh boundary. The boundary, of course, does not have any natural borders. The boundary is an outcome of an Englishman's doing. The name of the man is, of course, Cyril Radcliffe. In 1947, he was given less than 2 weeks in which to complete the job, and he partitioned chiefly the then provinces of Punjab for West and which later became Pakistan, and Bengal, which later became East Pakistan, which following the partition became East Pakistan, and subsequently and 1971 onwards Bangladesh. It was not the first attempt to partition Bengal, of course. The first attempt was 1905 when Rabindranath Tagore and a whole host of Swadeshi freedom fighters protested against the attempted partition, and the British had to roll it back. Of course, they repaid Bengal, or they made, or they put a cost on Bengal by transferring their erstwhile capital in 1911, 6 years after the attempted partition, from Calcutta to Delhi.
Right. Coming back to the present, I just wanted to ask you, are there reports that how far this is true, that there are attempts by Bangladeshi people to enter India through the different borders. How far are these reports true, according to you?
There is definitely an element of truth in this. However, uh, attempts to breach the border uh, is not a new development. It hasn't. It isn't something that has happened after 5th August, after Sheikh Hasina fled Dhaka for New Delhi. It predates. It goes back decades. In fact, to give you a potted history, in 1947, when Cyril Radcliffe's Boundary Commission was still determining the borders, in West Bengal alone, in what is later West Bengal, in Bengal alone, there were 4 districts in which people did not have an idea on whether they would stay with India or they would be sent to Pakistan, later East Pakistan. Murshidabad, Dinajpur, Malda, Nodia. Because these districts had significant populations of Muslims, and because Cyril Radcliffe under Mountbatten and the British decided that the partition would be carried out on religious lines, it was very difficult to find out where the border should be drawn in a society that was essentially syncretic. While people were following their chosen faiths or the faiths they were born into, there was a large degree of integration between the Hindus and the Muslims of Bengal. And of course, the border was drawn up most unscientifically, and therefore we still have situations where the kitchen is in one part of is on one side of the border, and the living space, the living of let's say a zamindari house, is on the other side of the border. There is a strange situation in Nodia even now, where where you have a very large mango orchard, and because the branches of a mango tree are spread over India and Bangladesh, Bangladesh takes the mangoes from the eastern branches of the tree,
My God.
and Bengal reaps the harvest from the western branches of the tree.
is very interesting.
It's a very strange situation, and this tree and this orchard is very close to what has come to be called Mujibnagar. Mujibnagar was where in April 1971 the Bangladesh Liberation Forces declared that they were a free country and they established their government in exile. This was 9 months before the war in December, in December 1971, when Mujibnagar was established and a free radio station was established. That radio station, of course, came to be operated from what was called Theatre Road, and now it's called Shakespeare Sharoni in Calcutta.
Right. I believe you went to Taki recently, where the Ichamati River is an excellent example of this border. You know how half of the river belongs to India and the other half to Bangladesh. Can you describe what
Taki
you?
is an example. I'm very happy you brought it up. Taki is an excellent example, and Ichamoti, the river that means willful, or the river that does as per its
Wishes.
wishes.
Yeah.
You have a border there that is supposed to be a line on the water, and it's a tidal river. It's in the Sundarbans Delta, in the northern part of the Sundarbans Delta, where the tide washes in and washes out, and you don't know where the line is. You don't have, you can't have something like a water map on water, on real water. This is not digital stuff we are talking about. We are talking about the earth and the sky and the delta. These are elements of physical matter. You cannot draw a line over there.
I believe that you also talked about earlier that earlier there were processions during the Durga Puja festival of Durga Puja, in Bangladesh, around the months of October or early November, somewhere along that those months. So in Bangladesh too, the celebration of Durga Puja took place earlier. After this incident in August this year, Durga Puja was not held apparently in Bangladesh because you were saying that the boatmen there told you that it used to be an occasion to meet their Bangladeshi counterparts who would come midway and exchange sort of greetings, talk to each other. So, what exactly did you hear about this? What did you find out?
The Durga Puja did take place in Bangladesh, in large parts of Bangladesh, in Dhaka particularly, but Dhaka being the capital is the focus of public attention domestically as well as internationally. The Durga Puja did take place in Kumilla, for example, or in Rajshahi, for example, or even in Chittagong. These are places where you have significant segments of the Hindu population. Hindus form just about 8% of the population in Bangladesh by last count. They're a small minority. Unlike, let us say, Muslims in India, who are a large minority. We haven't had a census that is overdue, but 14 to 15%. It's a large minority. Hindus are a small minority. There are 2 or 3%. There is 2 or 3% of Buddhists, mainly Chakmas, and some Christians also in Bangladesh. But there were also large parts of Bangladesh, and I believe Khulna, the district that borders India across the Ichamati River, had fewer Durga Pujas this time, particularly the village, the block or the subdivision opposite Taki is called Shatkira. Okay. And that is where the Durga Puja used to be held. Durga Pujas used to be held. By consent, it was decided that last year from the Bishorjon Ghat in Taki, on the western bank of the Ichamati, the 25 Durga Puja idols from Bengal, from India, would sail up to the midpoint of the river, and there would be at least 5 idols coming from Shatkira, from the eastern bank of the river, from Bangladesh, and they would immerse the images there, and they would exchange greetings, they would exchange sweets, they would make small talk, they would take selfies, they would take pictures, they would video each other, one another. So this was like a kind of people-to-people contact. While 25 idols from India did go this October for immersion, there was no idol from the Bangladeshi side.
Not a single one?
Not even one. This is what the boatmen told me.
Right. So that's a very glaring sort of indication of the trouble that has taken place inside Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about your visit to Bonga very soon after the incident on 5th August? You went to Bonga also, and what did you witness there?
The border guard Bangladesh, which is the Bangladeshi counterpart of the Indian Border Security Force, the BGB and the BSF used to hold like on India's western border in Punjab, in Wagah, they used to hold these evening retreat ceremonies.
Every day.
Every day. But unlike the goose stepping that we see in Wagah, where the Pakistan Rangers and the Indian Border Security Force, raise their feet up to their eyebrows, and they make these violent gestures at each other as if they're about to, go for one another's throats. The ceremony in the east, in India's east, with the Bangladesh border guard, was friendlier, was warmer. There was none of that animosity and public exhibition of antagonism. That had stopped in August. And when I went there, the BSF personnel posted there said that we are hoping it will resume. I'm not so sure about whether it has resumed. I haven't seen videos and I haven't been there to the Bonga Petrapol border, which is an official Petrapol Bonapol border, which is what it is. Benapol on the Bangladeshi side, Petrapol on the Indian side. I haven't been there, and I haven't seen videos put up since then, which the BSF and the BGP usually do. This is probably an indication of the distancing. But there is also the possibility that the BSF and the BGB are feeling the wave of the August uprising within their personnel, even if not institutionally. And there are reports that indicate that there has been some friction between them, particularly on the border in Assam. Though I must say that only yesterday the Inspector General of BSF's Northern Range, that looks after the border, who is in charge of the border, Malda northwards, Malda being in Middle Bengal, Malda northwards, said that we still have good understanding with the BGB, and we are hoping that nothing untoward will happen.
All right. So, how do you see the present scenario? I mean, it was quite unexpected. Bangladesh has been largely a friendly country as far as India is concerned. Yes, but what suddenly sort of brought this on, and where do you see this going? And also, I wanted to ask you your opinion about, Trump's victory in the US and how that will impact relations with Bangladesh, India, Bangladesh, US.
See, India will have to deal with Bangladesh as a neighboring country, and in the Indian Ministry of External Affairs has indicated as much. The Foreign Secretary, Mistry, Vikram Mistry, visited Bangladesh, met his counterpart in the interim government of Muhammad Yunus, and after he returned, he briefed the Standing Committee of Parliament and said that, we are willing to deal with the government of the day. And the government of the day, like it or not, is the interim government of Muhammad Yunus, even if it is not elected. And they will have to deal with it. It is not the first time that India would do it. India at first had refused to deal, for example, with the Taliban in Afghanistan after the Taliban took over in 2021. But just 3 months back, India recognized for the first time a Taliban diplomat, a consul in Bombay, who was actually an Afghan PhD student in India. And so India has indicated that it will deal in its neighborhood with the government of the day, whether it likes it or not.
And Yunus's sort of interim government has indicated that elections will take place end of 2025.
Right.
What is your comment on that?
Yes, he has not been quite clear about it. It is one of the earliest signs that Yunus is going back on his word, and the students who supported him, because when he first took over, they had set themselves a deadline of 3 months. Now that has got stretched to end 2025. This is what he said in his speech on the 16th of December, which is Bijoy Dibosh, or Victory Day, marking the victory of the joint India and Bangladeshi forces over Pakistan on the 16th of December 1971. And while he touched on the issue in the beginning of his speech, the rest of his speech was about what his government was going to do. And in that speech, he said that if the Reforms Commission on Elections that he has formed submits its report and the political parties accept the recommendations or give their suggestions in time, then the elections could be held by the end of 2025. If not, then in 2026. So we are safely looking at a 1.5 to 2 year regime at least of the Muhammad Yunus government. I think that they would use this time to form their own political formation, whether that will be in the whether that will take the form of a front or a political party that will contest elections alongside the BNP, but the Bangladesh Nationalist Party of Khaleda Zia, and the
Awami
Bangladesh
League.
Jamaat-e Islami. They have yet to take a call on whether the Awami League will be allowed to contest elections. But there is something more interesting that could happen before we come to that pass. And this is where politics and strategy will be tested, because the passions that have been ignited and fanned on both sides of the India-Bangladesh border can cause may have unintended consequences. For example, we have had a minor clash between the BJP, the Bangladesh, the border guard Bangladesh, and civilians in two parts of the border. One is in Meghalaya near Tura, and the other is at a short stretch on the border in Assam. We have also seen an explosion, particularly on Instagram, of young Bangladeshi men and women posting visuals on from the border. They are showing themselves crossing the pillars, these small pyramidical structures that mark the border, the Ratcliffe line, if you were to call it, stepping into Indian territory and going back. But they're doing it obviously to get more views and more clicks. But such incidents can have unintended consequences. I want to tell you about something that, I mean, in the history of India-Bangladesh relations, remember Bangladesh was born in 1971. I'm not talking about East Pakistan that came into being in 1947. I'm talking about Bangladesh that was born in December 1971 after, by conservative measure, a 9-month war in which General Jasjit Singh Arora, who was then the GOC-in-C, the General Officer commanding the Eastern Command of the Indian Army, was also the General Command heading the Joint Command of Indian and Bangladeshi forces. It is very important to remember this. The instrument of surrender that the Chief of Pakistan's Eastern Command, then Lieutenant General A.A.K. Niazi, signed with General Arora, clearly identifies General Arora as the Chief of Joint Indian and Bangladeshi forces. But that is history. We are coming to the present. And but that is also, the present needs to be informed by something that happened about 24 years back in 2001, when the only shooting match took place between the Indian Border Security Force and the predecessor of the border guard Bangladesh, which used to be called the BDR, the Bangladesh Rifles. And what had happened? 16 Indian BSF soldiers were killed in chiefly a skirmish that lasted about 24 to 36 hours. 3 Bangladesh Rifles soldiers were killed. I still remember seeing these absolutely horrifying pictures from the Assam Tribune, the newspaper from Guwahati, of Indian soldiers being returned from Bangladesh, like dead wild cats, strung up on bamboos and their hands and feet. They were mutilated and they were killed, tied to the bamboo, and they were brought back. They were really horrifying pictures. But let's fill you in on what happened. I have made some notes. I recall some notes. This was at a place called Boraibari, and it was in the subdivision, the Bangladeshi subdivision of Kurigram, bordering Assam. And the Bangladesh Rifles alleged that the border security force, the Indian border security force, had set up a camp and had within Bangladesh territory, and had started. The BDR had objected to the setting up of the camp, but they did not intervene. But they did intervene when the BSF, they allege, started building a road from that camp to another camp. And the BDR surrounded the BSF camp, and later the Director General of the Bangladesh Rifles told BBC Bangla in an interview that 70 of the BSF soldiers surrendered to the BDR. Now, this is what happened at the director, the Director General then of the BDR was Major General Fazlur Rahman, and he gives an account of that skirmish to BBC Bangla in a 2012 interview, that is more than 12 years back. So then the BDR followed up after forcing the BSF soldiers, the 70 BSF soldiers, to surrender by setting up 3 camps around the BSF camp at a place called Podua. And they alleged that the BSF fired 6 rounds from a machine gun. After the BSF soldiers were forced to surrender, the BDR went to a place called Roumari, a village, a hamlet almost, called Roumari. And they went there in plain clothes. They were not in uniform. As it so happened, a BSF patrol one afternoon was going by Roumari. Roumari is in Bangladesh territory even today. And they asked one of these villagers, who was actually a BDR, either a BDR soldier or one of the auxiliaries of the BDR, where is the BDR camp? And the soldier asked this of the villager in Hindi, not in Bangla. So the villager went to the BDR camp immediately after the BSF patrol had passed the village and reported ki আমাদের হিন্দিতে জিজ্ঞেস করেছে যে BDR camp কোথায়, ওরা এইদিকে আসছে. That is when there were about 8 personnel in that BDR post near Roumari, the Bangladesh Rifles post, and this is Major General Fazlur Rahman's account. They opened fire with machine guns and mortars. Mortars are, of course, they are light artillery with indirect fire capability. Indirect fire meaning, unlike a rifle or a pistol where you're seeing the target and you're aiming at the target and firing at the target, indirect fire means that the mortar shell goes up and then drops in the approximate area of the target. The firing started from 5 in the morning, and then the villagers fled. The BSF responded. Then one of the villagers Rahel Amin, who later became a member of parliament in Bangladesh in 2014. He was from the Awami League. He was one of the eyewitnesses of the battle. He mobilized 12 people from the village defense squad, and with the BDR, they joined the battle. The battle continued for 4 hours at first. In the meanwhile, from Dhaka and Mymensingh, from Jamalpur and Mymensingh, the BDR got reinforcements, and they reached Boraibari around 10:30 in the morning. The BSF personnel were still in a minority, and the skirmishing continued till the evening or night of April 19th, 2001. After the firing was over, 16 BSF personnel, the bodies of 16 BSF soldiers were found in Bangladeshi territory. The bodies of 3 BDR personnel were found again in Bangladeshi territory. But the BDR returned the bodies of the Indian soldiers, and the Indian BSF returned the bodies of the BDR soldiers. The point of this story is that neither the BDR nor the BSF were tasked as institutions by their respective governments to start skirmishing. So this is just an example of the toll that unintended consequences can take. This is an incident, an event that needs to be kept in mind as India and Bangladesh negotiate through quite literally troubled waters, because I came across a statistic today which is very interesting. Just give me a second, I'll just pull it up. And
thank you, Sujan. We'll wait for those figures. And we're nearing the end of our program. We have already crossed because the engaging conversation, we have already crossed the half an hour mark. But please go ahead, because this is immensely interesting and extremely relevant today. So
we have, of the 4,096 kilometer long border with Bangladesh, only the entire border is not fenced, because you can't fence the border. Besides, the border does not have natural boundaries. It doesn't have hills to to mark out watersheds. Around 3,180 kilometers, this is across all the states in the Eastern Theatre, around 3,180 kilometers is fenced. So you have almost 1,000 kilometers that is not fenced and cannot be fenced.
It's called porous borders.
It's
right.
a porous border.
Right.
It was never meant to be a border. It was never meant to be divided in land, on water, or amongst the people. This as an artificial border that the British imposed on us, and nobody can implement or ensure that this border will have any integrity. It's a story, of course, it's a legacy of colonial rule, and it is not exclusive to India and Bangladesh. We have these issues with Pakistan and Kashmir. We have the West Asia and the Middle East has these issues from colonial borders. But it's us, the general people, who pay the cost in terms of lives, in terms of economy, in terms of livelihoods.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Sujan. Of course, Cuckoo News, Sujan is, of course, an expert of geopolitics and strategic affairs, having covered the topics for over 20 years. And I'm lucky to have him as my colleague in Cuckoo News. Thank you very much, Sujan. Until the next time, many thanks.
Thank you.